Hello, everybody. Welcome. Good evening. Today is June 11th, 2019 of our Lord Jesus Christ. My name is Alex Backman. I'm coming to you directly from our studio. And today I have a very important update for you guys with regard to Planet X, a follow-up interview with biblical astronomer and Bible researcher Gill Broussard, who's on the line with me right now. Please visit his website. It's planet7x.net. And also, you can support his work, which is incredible, by the way, by buying his DVDs and also visiting his YouTube channel and subscribing. His YouTube channel is also Planet-7X. Just type in youtube.com/Planet-7X, and you can pitch in to his stellar work, download the free slides he has on his Google Drive, and get to know a little bit more about the reality of Planet X, not the other information that they try to push down our throats via misinformation or disinformation. No, this is the real deal, people. This is information that you need to know in order to stay involved and take any necessary actions. And I think the weather is already speaking for itself, isn't it, Gill? Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Alex. It's a pleasure being here today with you.
Well, Gill, there's a lot of information out there that's sometimes not factual, and people tend to get confused. I was also approached by certain people, specifically one person who was saying that he had the location of Planet 7X. He sent me a report with regard to its possible location, and he approached me, gave me this information. I transcribed it from a telephone conversation where they read the supposed official report on the location of Planet 7X or Planet X. This was last year. This supposed information came out of Socorro, New Mexico, the Very Large Array. And I tried to verify my facts as a journalist and try to get down to the bottom of this report. After I transcribed it, I translated it into English and sent it to you. This was back in August of 2018. And I asked you to go through it, go over it, and see if there was the information was factual, it was real, or maybe not. What's your take and assessment on
it? Yes, I've received the information you sent me, and carefully examined it. And I even, through astronomy software, he had mentioned the Cassini probe, how it had passed by it during April 13th of 2013, and then that it also came by Jupiter at the same time around that period of time. Well, Jupiter and this Cassini probe was opposite. They were about 120 degrees out of sync, almost the opposite side of the universe or the solar system. His dates and timing, I can point out another one where he said it was at the edge of the solar system on a given day. I think it was August 9th of 2004. He said it was at the edge of our solar system. Well, it only takes 16 years for it to reach the sun from that, if it was at Pluto's orbit. Okay. And so that meant that it would arrive to 2016. So his information right here is not jiving. Not at all. It doesn't follow the typical Kepler's orbital mechanics. Whenever you put it into a model, doesn't match the space probe versus where he's stating the planet was, which Jupiter. So it just doesn't line up. It's all fabricated. It's someone that doesn't know astronomy well enough to. He's a writer, but he's not an astronomer. I can tell you that.
Yeah, there's some things that didn't click there. There's a term called Copernicus. Is Copernicus really an astronomical term to measure distances?
Not that I'm aware of. Okay. It might be, but it's not that I'm aware of. The most common unit when dealing with large distances is a AU, which is an astronomical unit, which is roughly about 93 million miles. That's the distance between the sun and Earth. Let's say Neptune. Neptune is 30 astronomical units away from the sun. That's about the edge of our solar system. If you use Neptune. and that takes quite a bit of time at present orbital mechanics for it to reach the sun, about 16 years or so. So his information does not jive. It doesn't jive with the known mathematical formulas or orbital mechanics.
Well, okay, thank you very much, Gill. There you go. Gill Broussard saying, this information, this report is not real, not factual. There's things there that don't jive. They don't compute, mind you, with regard to stellar mechanics and planetary mechanics of motion and the laws of planetary mechanics that Kepler left us. So basically, we have to just discard this and debunk it. So if anybody by the name of Ruben comes to you and says, I know where Planet X7X or Planet X is, I can point you to it. I'm friends with somebody inside the government that gave me this information. Just please say no thank you. I know that this information is not factual, but we as a media organization need to say these things in order to warn the people so no other people get harmed or possibly given false information or false pretenses or under false hopes of finding the location of this elusive Planet X. It's elusive, but the models compute that it's there, don't they, Gill?
Yes, the data is overwhelming and it's overlapping, and that's what you need to be able to confirm sightings. If you have multiple sightings from different time periods and the data is overlapping, and modern information from our satellite probes on the orbits of comets being warped and our outer planets being warped out of their normal path, and all of this is pointed to the same area of space south of the universe, which is not polar south. South of the universe is towards Sagittarius. So right now we'd be looking at it. We would be scouting the skies between Sagittarius and Capricorn for a glimpse of this object whenever it's ready to show it to us. So that's where the information is pointing us.
Well, right now we have Jupiter in opposition, and it's a great moment to watch the night sky and look at Jupiter and all its moons. And you suggested some time ago that people should do a parallax in order to see if there are any perturbations to either Saturn or Jupiter, if it's coming from that sector of space, in order to find possibly its location, right?
But that's usually left up to the bigger observatories to better have that equipment that's stationary enough to better do that. But I just put it out there for in case anybody was able to spot anything. I was also saying that we should see Saturn's moons to be warped slightly, because it was one of the possibilities whenever it's passing. For it to arrive here, I'm looking at an estimate. Remember, estimate is an estimate. It's not factual yet. We need a sighting for it to be confirmed. So the model that we're building is using it to arrive on end of March of 2021. So that gives us where to look in the sky. We're looking for the next time. We expect some pretty big perturbations on Jupiter and Jupiter's moons. That would be February of this next year, would be when it reaches that orbit there. We'll see it slightly before that. If you're looking for their orbits to be warped, but that would be the peak. That'd be around February of this next year. So if we see that type of effects, we're already seeing effects in the jet streams of Jupiter, and that's affecting the big storm, the eye, the brown eye, the reddish eye.
Mm-hmm.
That's on a band of Jupiter. That's been viewed for over 300 years now. It's very, very well known. Well, it's shrinking now because those upper winds are changing, and we're seeing the aurora in the northern part of the planets, Saturn as well as Jupiter, I believe, both of them possibly. It's like a hexagon, pentagon shaped circle it's illuminated. High plasma particles is hitting the planet constantly for it to be energizing that. So we have some we have multiple anomalies that we're seeing in our universe. The sun's tilt is off, our moon orbit is slightly stretched, Earth tilt is slightly off, our magnetic field is racing at 12 times its normal rate. Our weather patterns, our jet streams, our volcanic activity, you name it, goes on and on and on. You put all of this together, what would be the contributing factor that could touch all of these realms? And there's only one, an inbound planet. And when you go back and look at where NASA sent the Pioneer and Voyager probes, guess what? It's exactly down the alley that I'm talking about, which is between Sagittarius and Capricorn as its entry coming back in. That's where they sent the Pioneer probes, and you can go read the articles. They were looking for Planet X at the time. In 1999, they went silent because they had instrument contact with it. And what worried them is that it's on Earth's planetary plane. It's on the ecliptic. Well, that means they had to stay quiet until they knew more about it. They've been quiet ever since.
And also, they've been also quieting some people that they don't want, people to know or people to talk too much about this. And then what they did, they used a very, very smart way of filling the internet with fake information. So they flooded the internet, YouTube and everything with fake information with regard to this very important event. And then people just, the people that started researching this maybe 10, 15 years ago got tired of it because they said, there's too much data out there about Planet X, but nothing really points to the real information. What do you want to comment on that?
The real information is in the white paper reports of Eastern and Western, the reevaluation of Eastern and Western records of the supernova 1054. This object was viewed for 26 months, 13 months coming in, 13 months out. They had no telescope. This is naked eye observation. This was roughly 960 years ago. They saw it with their naked eye. Normally, you could see a comet maybe for a couple months. If you see one for 2 to 3 months, that's a record breaker. That's something that the average one is only for 2 to 3 days, maybe a couple weeks. They saw this one for 26 months. That takes a very large object to generate that big of light for you to see at such a great distance. Because the more time it takes, the greater the distance away it is for it to still be seen for that time. That places it that you could see it at the orbit of Jupiter at the time that the Asian astronomers saw it. We have the Korean, the Chinese, and the Japanese astronomers of the time that was documenting this. So you have the Emperor's astronomers. That's a team of astronomers recording it in the Emperor's documents. And if you didn't record something accurately in the Emperor's, you lost your head. That's why there was a team of them verifying this. So let's say each one had 10 to 20 astronomers of 3 different countries. That's 60 astronomers proving out that this object was real. And we could go back now. Now we know what we're looking at, and we know that gave us the orbital path of this object. It's roughly around 360-year orbit if it doesn't come close to another planet or run into another object. That's the only thing that changes its course and alters it on the time frame. We found ancient artifacts that people were trying to describe, show the star patterns. You see a solar eclipse. and a crescent moon at the same time. That can't happen, because the moon is supposed to be the one that's doing the solar eclipse, unless there's a third object there, like Yeshua's sacrifice. 3 hours of darkness. How do you get that? The moon can only give you 7.3 minutes, and that's just Passover. The moon's on the wrong side of Earth to be involved, and we have other outside documents that says the moon was turned to blood red. That's an eclipse, and the sun was darkened in the eclipse mode. It's a double eclipse. Double eclipse don't happen in the natural unless you have a third object, and this was 3 hours of darkness. The moon can only give it 7.3 minutes of darkness. So that calculates it can't be bigger than about 7 diameters of Earth, maximum. And with the collision that we see that happened to Ceres and made the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, I would say this object is much more metallic than what we would normally think. Therefore, the size would drop down some. Anywhere between 2 times the size of Earth to maybe, if it's to 4 times, let's say. Somewhere between 2 to 4 times the diameter of Earth, because it's going to be metallic. Because of the effects that we're seeing at present. The magnetic fields, our own magnetic field is racing at 12 times its rate. The tilt of the sun is different. The tilt of the Earth is different. The moon's orbit is stretched. Our magnetic field is exponentially losing its strength, and it's an exponential growth, and we can see this as it gets closer. This is exactly what we would see with an approaching planet. This is not that far away, because our own asteroids that are near Earth, the orbits are being warped. And that's why you see all these fireballs coming into our atmosphere. And we will be very lucky if we don't see one hit the ground in a significant size one, hitting the ground, either hitting a town or hitting a forest, like a Tunguska effect, where thousands of acres were just flattened.
Or yeah, that was in Tunguska in Russia. It was 1907, I think, and then you had the one in 2013 at the end of January on the border between Kazakhstan and Russia, Chelyabinsk. The Chelyabinsk event that shattered 3 million windows and injured multiple people.
About 1,500 people, yeah. Now, they were lucky. That exploded so high in the atmosphere, the only thing they got was a pressure wave. Keep in mind, these things can explode at any given point of its path. About 40% to 50% explode in the air before they hit the ground. So they were lucky. It exploded high enough where only a pressure wave. If it would have exploded closer to their town, it would have vaporized people, just like an atomic weapon would have done. It's not radioactive, but it would vaporize people. That's how Lot's wife got vaporized in the biblical stories. Because she turned back on the second explosion. After the first explosion, she went back around where like she was protected. And that when the second one hit the second town, that light was so hot, it just vaporized her. And that's what. And then what's left of her on the rock is her shadow. You can see that in Nagasaki in Japan still today. That people were vaporized and nothing but their shadows left on the stone. These are eyewitness accounts. We have it 14 times in the biblical records. Another 5 to 6 times in secular records. And it's time again for it to come back. It's its cycle. So people, whenever you start to see the internet going down, or the news where they're filtering the news, you're not getting the weather reports the way you should, and everything else. Start looking towards Sagittarius, between Sagittarius and Capricorn. If you see a comet there on the ecliptic, well, it's going to be viewed for a good while, probably. If you had perfect skies, you'd see it for 13 months. If they're still hiding it from us, then you may see it only for 8 months, let's say. Anywhere from because the the rabbis in Israel saying that the whole world will see it at the 7th month before it arrives. Well, that's not a normal comet. You don't see things that far out at 7 or 13. That's a planet-sized object. That's the only way you can reflect light all the way from Jupiter and see it with your naked eye all the way to Earth. So,
okay, thank you for that recap and also warning for people to understand this. Let's get down to the order of events that we have here and start talking about that. Number one, before Planet 7X arrives, you will see seal number 3 from the Bible, which means global economic trouble will occur. And this is already happening. I mean, the United States has a $20 trillion debt. A lot of the economy, I mean, it's robust, it's growing, but that doesn't mean its debt is getting paid off. And this creating a huge bubble, isn't it?
well, all of the countries have a large phenomenal debt. Matter of fact, there's probably about 10 to 15 other countries that has even a larger debt than the U.S. per their GDP. Okay, which is the way you rate this. So if trade breaks down, if it continues to have a stalemate, and there's a breakdown, then you're going to see the economy slide. I think this is part of the problem that we see that CO3 is talking about, because we have to see CO3, 4, and 5 happen before the planet arrives. That doesn't mean you don't see the planet. I'm saying before the planet arrives. As long as we didn't see these 3 happening, don't have to worry. But one of the other signs it tells us when we see earthquakes climbing like the birth pains of a woman. Well, we're already seeing that.
Oh, absolutely.
We've been seeing that.
Oh, yeah.
We've been seeing that for about 20 years now, and it's been exponential on its growth. And that's exactly what we see with approaching planet.
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned earthquakes, which is something that I cover a lot in Spanish. I do a weekly earthquake, volcano, and space weather report. And part of the information that we share with people, the analysis of earthquakes, is that they're getting deeper. A lot of deep earthquakes, a lot of earthquakes happening inside the mantle of Earth now, not on the lithosphere, but inside the asthenosphere, which is the upper mantle. And this is affecting. This is, well, basically evidence of deep focus earthquakes that are certainly being triggered by the mantle, the core, the outer core of Earth, possibly shooting plasma towards the lithosphere and creating these circuits of tremendous energy, like lightning bolts. So they're massive, going through the mantle probably and hitting, the lithosphere until something gives, and then we have like the problems in the ionosphere, which is collapsing. We have serious threats right now to our species because of weather changes and because of that which you are mentioning that is perturbing the rest of the system.
Right. One of the scariest points that, remember, I can't tell you, I don't know the year that this thing is going right. We need a sighting. But one of the things that really is a little scary is at the rate that we're losing our magnetic field, which is protecting Earth. That number is scary. Now, they said that Earth was at its strongest in 1850. Okay. Well, when you go back and look at what my orbit is at 360 and where it was at its aphelion, the furthest point from the sun, okay, that was 1858 was its furthest point. And that's when they said Earth's magnetic field was the strongest. And it took 100 years for it to drop 5%. All right. Then another 50 years before it dropped another 5%. As time is cut in half, we're losing another 5%. After that, it was another 25 years, and we lost another 5%. Another 12 years, we lost 5. Another 7, we lost 5. But this is exactly the math that you would see with the magnetic field, not gravity, because gravity doesn't have a large uh, gravity is not the ruling force of the universe anymore. The physicists have it correct. It's magnetic fields. And this is the exact same formula. That means if you continue with what they showed us on the data, well, we run out of the magnetic field just around 2021. This happens to be the same time period of the Bible talks about. We're supposed to be in Jacob's trouble. The globalists and Islam plotted against the seed of Jacob. This is what you saw in 9/11 and in 2001. And when Jacob went to leave, his father-in-law tried to stop him. He turned around. He says, "I worked for you for 20 years." Well, guess what? In 2001, you had 20 years. That's 2021. That year gives me great concern on what I'm seeing scientifically and what I'm seeing biblically. I have yet to qualify this in astronomy terms because we need a sighting. But those two are already there. All right? Those 2 points are already being checked off the paper. There's not much more I can say on that. I'm just
okay. Thank you. Yeah, with regard to that, seals 3 and 4 are probably just right now bursting open. That means sequentially the 5th seal must come. Although we remind the people that this is just a model that has to readapt itself until we see the object itself in the sky. Obviously, eventually we know that all the astronomers out there, amateur astronomers, astronomy clubs, and people in New Zealand. I want to say hi to Jairo Suarez, who's probably watching this interview. Get in touch with Gill. We need to network. We need to get together and put all this information out there. So eventually, when we do have a sighting, we can extrapolate this information and give it to all the astronomers at the same time, so everybody won't lose sight of the object itself. They are covering it up. Gill knows a little bit more about that. Gill, can you confirm or deny that they're trying to cover it from being seen as of yet because it's still way out there?
Yeah, Ronald Reagan during his time. Remember this the Star Wars, that they were putting defensive lasers in the sky.
Yeah, SRI. That's all right. Mm-hmm.
And he gave a particular speech at the UN where it was almost cryptic, like you would almost mistake it as if there was going to be an alien invasion. Like because he said we had if the world had an outside threat, how we would be coming together. We'd put all our differences, aside, and we would be working together. What that outside threat of Earth? First thing the average person would think, alien. He's talking about an alien invasion, some type of thing. No, he's talking about a planetary threat. Or an asteroid.
Alien. In fact, the word alien doesn't necessarily mean an alien from Hollywood and sci-fi.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Alien means foreign. It's even in the Bible. Alien.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Lasers can do multiple things. It can shoot down ICBM. It can target buildings and people on Earth. It can put a hologram to where you think something is real in front of you. And it can be facing outward into space and place a hologram of stars patterns, black, star patterns, and you'd never know the difference. You can go get right now, you can go look on Amazon, or any of these places you shop at, and look at the latest projector screens for presentations. Okay? They're laser projectors. They don't use a bulb anymore. And they project everything that you're presenting, or like a TV screen, on just about anything you want. Well, just think a little bit bigger. They got them in space. The only thing you have to do is stop that little dot of light from you seeing it from Earth. It's big. It's big when it's close, But when we're looking at space, the only thing you see is a dot of light. And if it's far enough out there, it's not even a light. It's just a gray haze. That's the only thing that I can see, because we have all the physical effects of an approaching planet. Because it's not global warming. Last time I checked, there's no cars on Mars or Jupiter. Why are they being affected? Okay, the only thing that can affect the orbits of planets is another orbital body. That's how we found the last 3 planets in our system, because of the effects of it, of the prior one. You know, we have a unknown body which is known throughout history, which it was coined as Planet X, and it still is. This is it, and it's listed in the Bible as the fiery dragon of old. That's the old term for a comet throughout Asia. Israel is in Asia, and some of the European countries call it a fiery sword.
Oh, there's a lot of terms for it. They call it Gabriel's hammer, the Great Kachina, maybe. I have here a book from the old manuscripts. It's called the Colburn Bible. It's not the real Bible that we read, but it's called the Colburn Bible. And this book, I have it right here in front of me. If anybody wants to see it, it's right here. And I also bought the electronic edition to verify that this is the real deal. And from the Chaldean Trust, mind you, I think they're in New Zealand all the way. In chapter 5, part 3, it talks about the destroyer. And it says, the doom shape called the destroyer in Egypt was seen in all the lands thereabouts. I think Moses knew about this. I think also the great turmoil that happened at the time of the Exodus, which was a huge volcanic eruption in the Mediterranean, which is the Santorini volcano going off, right? So this is page 236, chapter 5. It says part 3, the doom shape called the destroyer in Egypt was seen in all the lands thereabouts. In color it was bright and fiery in appearance, changing and unstable. It twisted about itself like a coil, like water bubbling into a pool from an underground supply. And all men agree it was a most fearsome sight. It was not a great comet or a lucent star, being more like a fiery body of flame. So that's just one paragraph. Need I say more?
Now, keep in mind, when those books are written, it was not written in English, chances are. It was written in another language, a primitive language. And this is modern day's person, who's probably not an astronomer, who's trying to interpret this. So you gotta be careful on what he's saying that it's not what it is not. Be careful about that, because you couldn't read English just 300 years ago.
Right.
I look at English. You know?
Yeah, I agree with that, because there are some things here that obviously the vocabulary is more well refined. They probably retranslated it from the older texts. Supposedly, Marshall Masters, who brought this out originally back in the first decade of the 2000s, was all over this and published this with permission from the Chaldean Trust, supposedly. And but it's very interesting nonetheless that not so the wording, but how would they, if this is not true, let's just say the translation is not accurate, why would they write like 1,000 pages of manuscripts of old stories of lore from the Celts and also from the Egyptians, pointing also to this great turmoil that they already lived, and that we as a society would end up living psychically. And they are even, in this book, I've gone through some of it, they've warned humanity of the changes in society that would point to the collapse of our world.
Keep in mind, paper was extremely, if it was papyrus for the Egyptians, if it was in the Middle East, it was animal skins. Right. Would they kill an entire herd of sheep and goats just to print something that they're making up? Not necessarily, no. I would be, and this is the same story that we can find through multiple cultures. Now, what piqued my interest is when they make an artifact, either clay or metallic, and they show what the nighttime sky was like when it did pass. But
Right.
that gives me the exact date. It tells me even the circumstance that Earth tilted 26 to 28 degrees. You read about it in the Bible where the shadow went backwards on steps for Hezekiah. It wasn't a sundial. That's the English translation that's wrong. You got to go back and read the Hebrew. Hebrew says on steps, the shadow. The shadow went backwards. And that makes scientific fact. Again, when you go and calculate that, it's 26, 28 degrees. Same thing as the Nebra sky. We have about 4 artifacts. One of them's out of Egypt. One of them's out of Nineveh. One of them's out of Germany. One's out of China. I might be skipping one. But they didn't know each other. And they got 4 different time periods talking about the same object. Same object.
So, but so this is evidence.
That is coming about.
Yeah, this is evidence, right? These are
Hard
real,
evidence.
hard evidence.
Hard evidence.
Right. Prima facie. Okay.
Okay. And then we got white paper reports that are about 900 years ago. Hard evidence. Because when you start to plot it on software, they're not making it up. It follows the sequence and the points that that the model shows you would be seeing as they describe it. So we can confirm what their sightings are from the software, exactly where they were standing. They were standing at the palaces, at their astronomy base. We know the capitals at that time of those 3 countries. And when we view from that, at the time period they said, at the time of day they said, and it was by this constellation, this is from a star. That's exactly what we see. And when we build the model, it's catching all of their sightings. We don't have to change the model any. The same 150 day distance between entry and exit on Earth's planetary plane. When we draw that model out, we don't have to edit it at all. It matches exactly what they're seeing. That means we got the orbit correct.
So we have the perihelion of Planet X already extrapolated from all these sightings. These are astronomical sightings. People saw it for at least 3 countries in Asia. Saw the object traverse the sky. It's not a supernova. It's not Sagittarius A, beaming out. It's not an explosion. It's not a pulsar or whatever. This really is an object that moved through the sky and was seen. And it's on a white paper. It's on an astronomical white paper because people tend to just dismiss anything.
Right. This is not a mini solar system like some people are saying. This object probably has moons with it, between 6 to 7 moons with it, according to the legends and the data. The moons might even show up as miniature comets around it. Don't know yet because there's no one living right now that ever seen it. So it's hard for me to say. We have 7 little smaller objects around it. The object that made the eclipse for 3 hours can't be greater than 7 diameters larger than it can't be, because that's beyond the shadow range. So it's smaller than that. So it's anywhere between 2 times the diameter of Earth. I'd say maybe around 4, between 2 and 4 times the diameter of Earth, if it's metallic, because it destroyed that planet and it kept going. It slowed it down, but it survived. So
it's super dense. It's probably the second densest object in the solar system. From what you're saying, it's super compressed, and but it's not a sun, right? Like they used to say, the Planet-7X, Planet X researchers back in the day that defended the Zacharias-Sitchin model, saying that it's
you see, if it passes near the orbit of Mercury, about the sun. Remember, Venus is so hot on the surface that lead should melt. Okay, so we're passing even many times closer. This object's passing near the orbit of Mercury. Okay, that's how close it is to the sun when it comes back around. If it has any type of volatiles, anything that could burn, I'm not talking about trees, okay, but if in any type of chemical composite, it would gas out from its. Remember when Earth is in a volcanic rupture, you have methane that comes out from our core. Okay. Well, if this thing may have a core that has methane also, and it would be gaseous, that would be the fire that you're seeing in or reading out of that document. You see? But is it a sun? No, it's not a sun. Okay? Because if this would have been the pull of a sun is so great, and if it got so close that it tilted us, and according to the objects that they drew on where it was, we wouldn't be having this conversation if it passed once by us. This is not a sun, but it is a planet like a planet-sized comet, or comet-sized planet instead, and it's going to get close enough where we will see probably some surface details. This is the Bible calls this the worst event in all of Earth's history. That's not my comment. That's the biblical comment. Noah's flood is not the worst. This next time it passes. Remember, it passed about 6 times since Yeshua's sacrifice. And this was the book of Revelation was written in 2,000 years ago. He didn't say anything about these other 5 or 6 times that it passed. It says, when you see Israel formed in one day, that generation shall not die out before all is fulfilled. But that generation, that Holocaust generation, is getting pretty old right now. And he says, when you see earthquakes climbing like the pains of a woman giving birth, know that it is approaching. It definitely is approaching. Using astronomy data and what we're seeing, geological data and magnetic readings on the Earth's poles and everything, without a doubt, when you put this data together, it's an outside force that is affecting us.
Well, yeah, nothing would explain the changes that we're seeing throughout the whole system. I mean, if it were just the magnetic field weakening, then you would say, well, maybe we're going into a polar flip, magnetically speaking.
Right.
The head of the European Space Agency, Rune Fluberhagen, also confirmed, yeah, we're going into a pole flip. NASA confirms. First, they tried to deny it, and then Berkeley came out and said, yeah, in less than 80 years, the magnetic poles of Earth are going to flip. Now, guess where they're going to join? Probably somewhere in the Indian Ocean near the Gulf of Bengal off India, on the eastern side of India. So the thing here, I don't know, if we go to a full reversal, right? Go ahead.
Yeah, I would disagree with the study because they're not studying the planet and its effects. Everything is an exponential growth. As the distance is cut in half, you have another 5% loss. Now, the way that our magnetic field flips, and I'm talking about not the geographic poles, I'm talking about the magnetic poles, is when this planet gets close enough and you have a plasma discharge between the 2 planets, like 2 capacitors. You get this 30-mile wide lightning bolt hitting the Earth multiple times. Every time it's going to hit, your magnetic field will swap. We have streams of lava out of a little vent that were just pouring out slowly, and that magnetic lava, that lava rock has a magnetic signature that shows Earth magnetic field flips 7 times, between 5 to 7 times. Now you can't get hundreds of thousands of years with a lava vent, pushing out a lava coming out of it. No. This is a lightning bolt hitting Earth so large that it swaps our magnetic field. If you hit a magnet with a lightning bolt, the magnetic field switches. Okay? So we have marks on Earth that shows Earth has been hit before in the past by very large lightning bolts, 30 miles wide. There's one in Africa. It's called the Eye of the Sahara. So
Now, there's another theory out there, Gil, that I do have to focus on here and share with you. The idea that maybe the sun is going to have a micronova, or it could have like a mini explosion, not as big as a nova, but enough to rattle us that much that sends debris our way, and that provokes a massive extinction level event on Earth that dovetails perfectly with the Planet X model, by the way. I'm not saying it is, but some academics have just suggested, like Robert Schoch out of Boston University, he's an academic there. He's the guy who said that the Sphinx is more than 10,000 years old. And also another temple structure on the border with Syria and Turkey, I forget the name right now, Gebel Tepe, I think it is. It's 12,000 years as Tiwanaku. He's suggesting that maybe a solar event had to do with it. What I'm saying is maybe both of them. Maybe as X comes in, it triggers the sun, and the sun does have also a significant explosion that affects the whole system. But the Planet X weakening at this exponential rate is just a heads up that we're going right into this right now.
Yeah, you have to go back to what his study is based on. It's not based on the sun. His study is based on the extinction, multiple extinction levels of life on Earth. Like the dinosaurs, multiple times, so on and so on. You see? Mm-hmm. So he's trying to come up with what did it. It was this planet that did it. Okay? When Earth tilts and tidal waves come across the shores, or meteors hit one side of the Earth and it burns up the vegetation, only, remember this, just read your Bible on the book of Revelation and believe those numbers that it's giving us. There are phenomenal numbers. I mean, remember this ushers in the Messiah coming in. And there's going to be a remnant that's brought to a place in the wilderness, in a place of safety. And that's if you're following his rehearsal patterns on his timing, to be in Jerusalem for about 2 weeks before Sukkot. Start arriving. But you need to be there for Sukkot. 6 months later will be Passover. That's when this object is going to be probably around the end of March. Possibly 2021. That's an estimate. We need visual verification. We have enough scientific information to say that it's close and it's affecting us, but we need the astronomy information. We need it to be verified. And I think it'd be left up to each listener for them to do their own verification. Because I don't believe they're going to allow any astronomers on the news cycle whenever this thing comes around without being arrested.
Oh, no, absolutely. No, they're going to start silencing also journalists and everybody that talks about it, or take down their way of getting to the people. The thing here is that just on the serious note, for the serious people that are really researching this, it's very important that you contact Gill Broussard so you can get his contact information and set up the networking necessary, because if the internet does shut down, and we know that it will because they did something really weird with it some months ago, where they partially shut down the main YouTube servers. The ICANN servers were attacked, and supposedly it was an attack, but we know Facebook went down. We know YouTube, part of it went down. And what I was told by a specialist in IT, and these are specialists, okay, in information technology, he told me, no, they did something to the internet. So they're planning something huge. That's what he told me. Something huge where they're going to reset the whole system. That's what he told me. So, yeah, it's going to get to that point. So we're going to need probably a passport and have the means to travel to Israel. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, there should be a financial blessing coming between that. Just like when they were leaving Egypt, there was a financial blessing for the ones who were following this. But I've given you a chart that you can give out to your viewers. It shows where it should be at any given date and where it is in the sky to look for it.
Yeah, it's on the screen
The,
right now, Gil. It's on the screen right now.
so, but when it gets to about 7 months away, the whole globe is seeing it. But it's not a scary sight. It's just a small comet in the sky. It's not going to be that scary. But when you see it from 7 months all the way to arrival, remember that's not a normal comet. Most comets you see is only for a couple of weeks, maybe a couple months. You want to see this one for 7 months, and if you're lucky to see it, which I don't think we will be, the way the Chinese saw it, that was 13 months before it arrived. Just make sure your viewers get this chart. That's their guide. They can use the same guide no matter what year it is. It's going to have the same pattern, the same time frame roughly. Okay, it can't be more than 2 weeks off for any given year. So
this is very important, so people know that this is an estimate. It's a chart, a model based on all the extrapolated data and the huge amount of research that Gil has already done in order to extrapolate this and put it into a graphic model so you can understand how this is going to be playing out. So yeah, thank you. That's very important.
Because I believe we're pretty much all on our own. I believe at that point in time, you have to do what you're supposed to be doing, what you're supposed to do. Show up for Jerusalem at the right time. That's 2 to 3 weeks before Sukkot. Bring a tent because there's not going to be enough tents. There's not going to be enough hotel rooms. Bring your supplies you need as far as cooking utensils, pot, stuff that you would camp with. Think of it like you're going camping, because it's going to be because the buildings are not going to be safe globally. Buildings are not going to be safe. Matter of fact, when wormwood collides with the Earth, which is 5 months later, it says every wall is either cracked or crumbled globally. And from my estimates, and I might be a little bit off, I expect it to be at least a magnitude 14 when that thing hits Earth, for it to be able to crack every wall on Earth. Okay, cracked or crumbled. If you're closer to it, well, there ain't gonna be much of a wall. If you're on the opposite side of Earth, it'd be cracked probably, But it says every wall on Earth is either cracked or crumbled. That is significant.
So we're going to be hit by multiple asteroids besides Planet X. Is that what you're saying?
We're not hit by Planet X at all. It just passes close to it, causes the tilt. Okay.
Right. Exactly.
We run into the debris field that's trailing behind it. Earth collides with the debris field, which is asteroids, and it takes about an hour to cross that. It says your doom comes within an hour. That's half the globe, which is the daylight side, at the time that this is passing, which is, it says north and south. It says a third of the trees, third of the grass, third of the rivers. Rivers is fresh water. Hebrew at that time didn't have the word continental crust, but he just described it. So what half of the globe is 1/3 of continental crust? That is North and South America. North and South America is not mentioned throughout the rest of prophecies after that.
But not population-wise, is that correct? It's just 1/3 of the continental structure of it? Mm-hmm.
Yep, and whoever's living at that time is going to be wishing death for 5 months. 5 months is the second event. We run into the second debris field. Okay, that's when wormwood hits the Earth, and that finishes off North and South America.
Now, this is at the time when our planet is going to stop rotating. Is that correct?
Before it arrives, like the last 3 days before it crosses the Earth's path, Earth is entering into the plasma tail. The tail is not in front of it. The tail is at an angle. The tail points opposite of the sun. So it points ahead of us. It points where Earth is going into the plasma tail. And that causes us to slow down by 12 hours on our rotation. If it wouldn't do that, we would collide with it. That's why that mechanism is in there. It performs a miracle of the Antichrist. He would claim that he's changing the rotation of the Earth, and
I
that
see.
and that he's saving the Middle East, because the Middle East is supposed to be the side that points towards the sun. But there's a 12-hour delay in Earth's rotation, and the forward speed is slowed down. And this thing just passes by us. Then we go into the meteor shower behind it. And that causes the destruction of the 1/3 of the continental crust that he's described. That's North and South America. And the Antichrist on the other side, he looks like he's God. Because he said that he would save them by slowing down the earth and changing time and having fire fall on their enemy.
These are the wonders that are spoken of in the Bible, right? Mm-hmm.
Right. Look, the Bible is matching the model, the science, with the new physicist model of the universe, not the astronomy model. The tail of a comet is plasma. When you put that fact into play, and that magnetic fields are the ruling force, not gravity, and you look at this model the way it goes, it matches the story of the book of Revelation in the exact order that they're placing it. And they didn't know orbital mechanics. They didn't know a plasma universe. They didn't know the magnetic field is the stronger force in the universe. They didn't know it was 150 days later that it crosses that the debris field crosses our path again, like it did in the Asian astronomers
Right.
in 1054. They can't guess that exact. Multiple times throughout the Bible. 14 times in the Bible. Now, nobody can guess that exact.
Absolutely. No, and the Bible
is... If you knew the times.
No, and just to imagine that the Bible is precise in its times, in days or years or weeks, and we don't pay attention to those signs. That's why in the Pentagon they have a specific room, I'm told, where they just study the Bible. That's all they do. Study the Bible. Because they know that it's in the Bible. All the keys to time. Isaac Newton was obsessed with the Bible too. And he even wrote a book about the history of civilization. But inside it, he knew that the key to time itself was embedded inside the book of Revelation and the book of Daniel. He was obsessed with it. He spent like most of his life just trying to decode the book of Revelation. And if he had only the access to what we have today, the technology we have today, oh man, Isaac Newton would have probably extrapolated all this information and given it to us also incredibly,
Now, take a look at Nineveh with Jonah. When Jonah arrived in Nineveh, a fish, he's puked up out of a belly of a fish. He was dead in the fish to start out with, because his soul was crying out. His spirit was crying out to the Father, so he was puked up, and then he was reformed, and then he goes talk to Nineveh. He had an attitude change right there, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So he gets to Nineveh, and Nineveh has these old stories of the past. They don't have internet like we have to do today.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have TV. They don't have radio. They don't have all these distractions. Okay? And when they saw birds dying, falling out of the sky, they seen the locusts coming in, killing their crops. They saw the temperature changes between winter and summer. They felt the ground shake. They felt hotter because the sun is burning more helium than hydrogen, one of the two. I forgot which one it is at the moment. That's why you feel hotter outside.
Mm-hmm.
And they knew something was wrong. And here comes Jonah. Jonah didn't create one miracle. Go to a town and say repent and not create one miracle. Would they believe you? What sort of reaction you would get? would you get the same reaction in Nineveh, where everybody, including the king, repented? Because what he did was, he says, he pointed to the sky. He says, and he pointed at this object, the Planet X coming in. It was rounding the sun at the 40-day mark. He says, your doom comes in 40 days. Now, keep in mind, Jonah's not an astronomer. How did he know it's all the way on the opposite side of the sun that would take 40 days to reach us? Because the Almighty told him to say that.
Absolutely. Praise God.
40 days later was when Hezekiah felt that he was going to die, and he needed a sign to prove that Elijah was speaking to the Father. He says, move the shadow backwards instead. And he had him pick, which one you want? You want to go forward or backwards? Wanted to go backwards by 10 steps. That would be the same way as if the seasons would have changed, but it was the earth tilting. Okay, and exactly when he commanded it, boom, the shadow on the steps went backwards 10 steps, then forward back again. You know when that happened? That had high winds. I guarantee you, Hezekiah jumped up out of his bed. He didn't feel like he was dying anymore, and that he was very scared of those winds.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So this was exactly the thing at Nineveh, was exactly 40 days earlier, and we have a clay disc that gives us the exact date of that event. So I can date it 40 days later would have been the Hezekiah date.
Right.
How did they make this up?
No, they
get the right star pattern on the disc, showing the object, and also call out this is 40 days before it arrives, and time it with Hezekiah, which he's in Nineveh and they're not communicating.
They don't have internet.
And 150 days later, on the second event, an army that was going to invade Jerusalem the following day dies at night because of the meteor shower that hit them at night. There was comments that they believe it was micrometeors, like bullets, that killed them. Only the king survived.
And on your slide, you have King Hezekiah's royal seal right there. I mean, it's amazing. It's the winged disc.
Right.
Wow.
So he wasn't into paganism. That's the way that you show a disc is going across it. The wings shows movement across the sky. If it would have crawled across the ground, it put legs, but it's in the sky. It's flying. So they say this disc is moving across the sky, and he marks it.
That's very interesting. Very, very interesting research that you've done, because it brings, obviously, the Bible is a supernatural book. That's why it's compiled as such. It's the word of the one true God. The one true God.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. It's consistent from beginning to end. So it doesn't matter who wrote it. The authors were all compelled and inspired by one God, which is the only God. And that God from out of this universe, mind you, out of this dimension of time and space, talked to them and was directing them. So everybody was directed. Everybody's part of the play, part of the scripture. And it ends up being that today, as we enter the end of days, we are also becoming parts of that. In that respect, I don't know if anybody's asked you this question, Gill. Do you think you're fulfilling prophecy in a way too?
We each have our own part. We each, remember, there's no such word in Hebrew meaning accident. We weren't born as an accident. We have a mission in life, each of us. And remember, CO3, 4, and 5 have to happen before they arrive. If we don't see CO3, 4, and 5, then don't worry about it. It's some other year. But if you do see this, and then when it comes you see a comet also of that, then you know this is going together. And that March of that following year, at the end of March, you need to be in Jerusalem way before that for Sukkot. Around Sukkot would be somewhere around October 1st, so you need to be 2 to 3 weeks before that. The Bible is real and Revelation is real. And if you want to be part of a real event, you got no other choice because the whole world is going to be judged here. So if you're in the right place at the right time, pray that you're taking away into the wilderness this remnant that he saves as a, this is not a rapture. Rapture is later. This is a taking away of a remnant into the wilderness that his bride and his bridemaid says it's like a wedding. And they are protected for 3.5 years during that great tribulation period. I think you better take his words a lot more serious than what some of these churches have been telling you.
Yeah, these churches, they just do these worship sessions, and they just supposedly, do this rock and roll show, singing to God, which is okay, but they don't go into the deep things that are happening right now in the world. Just look at what's happening around Israel, what's happening between Iran and Iraq. They're about to go to war again. The United States is also, sending 120,000 troops to the region, and Iran is also threatening to attack. Russia is threatening to attack also the United States. There was a little skirmish just recently in the Philippine Sea between a cruiser, a destroyer of the United States, and the Russians. They almost collided in the Philippine Sea. I mean, things are already beginning to escalate. Also in the geopolitical arena, society is just collapsing. There is no more family unit left. It's all post-modern secularism. It's also Satanism. Overtly, yeah, they are overtly pushing the Satanist agenda all over the place. And for those who have eyes to see and ears to hear and a heart to really feel what is happening, I think the day of the Lord is at hand. I don't know what you think.
We can't open eyes, me and you. We don't have that ability. Only the Father opens and closes eyes and ears. Okay? It says that. He chooses who he wishes to open the eyes. And we can deliver, we are delivery boys, okay? We are delivering the information, but we have no ability to open it. That comes from the Almighty himself in prayer. If people pray, he opens your eyes and he shows it to you. Then it makes sense. But if you don't, well, that's why the scariest word in the Bible says remnant. Just like there was only 8 on Noah's flood.
Right.
Well, it's going to be more than 8 this time because the population is larger. We have more people on earth today than has ever lived throughout history. If you add up all the people throughout history, we have more people on earth today than everybody that ever existed. This is called the Greater Exodus. If you look it up in the Bible, you'll find it. That means there was a minor one. The minor one was coming out of Egypt. That was a few million they calculated. Well, this remnant that goes into the desert is about that. If you show up. Because he says to show up. If you go read, it says the Yahovah, which is the Father's name, says, these are my covenants and feasts, and you will follow them forever. They're not the feasts of the Jews. He says, these are my feasts. My rehearsal pattern is the actual word, Hebrew word means. Rehearsal means you're practicing for an event in the future that's going to be real. These are practice runs. When you see this object in the sky, it's no longer a practice run. It's a real McCoy.
So it's like a rehearsal before a wedding. And imagine you're going to a wedding and you're not even ready yet, and it's almost Saturday. I mean, what are you doing? It's like...
Yeah. You can either be the guest at a wedding, or you can be the bridemaid, or you can be the bride. Those are the 3 positions that are open. Okay? The most knowledge, it says the least knowledge is first, most knowledge last. The ones that enter the New Jerusalem are the least first. That's the guest to the wedding. Just like a regular wedding, the guests go in first. The groom is already inside. The guest the first, then the bridemaid, then the bride. The one with the most knowledge comes in last. That's the bride.
Okay, so the bride is those who are already knowledgeable, understand the signs of the times, right? The signs of the times.
My people die of lack of knowledge, he says. That's his quote. Not mine. That's his quote. That's Yeshua's quote. My people die of lack of knowledge.
That's in Hosea 6, I think it's 6:4 or something like that, or 4:6.
Yeah, yeah. They can find it. They type in on the internet. There's an instant Bible that pops up. That's why you don't hear me quoting the numbers of verses. I allow them to find it themselves if they're interested.
Amen to that.
They can find it.
Yeah, amen to that. So when we see, because I have the slide here, the one about the appointed times, which is incredible. I mean, the way you play this out and explain it graphically. If we go into the fifth seal, there would be a peace agreement, and you think how close we are to that?
Well, what's interesting is remember, there's an individual that's going to be that would be his job to get a peace agreement done, because the whole global economy is in chaos because of terrorism. The rabbis believe that the Messiah, now keep in mind, they're going to be fooled by this false Messiah. This false Messiah is going to show up at the last day of Sukkot. He will stay there probably 4 to 5 months before he gets the peace agreement signed even. He has to negotiate it and get it done. He can't come back until he gets it done. There's a reason for that. So it'll be 4 to 5. So there'll be about 40, almost near the 40-day mark when they tell the public of the world that the object that's rounding the sun, just like the warning of Jonah, the government will only give the people of the world 40 days. That's when they're going to declare it. This object you see right here is a planet that's going to pass near Earth. Well, at the same time, the peace agreement is being signed. This fulfills Islam. A sign in the heaven is occurred when peace is struck. That's seal 5. That is complete. It starts at the end of Sukkot, and roughly around the 40-day mark is where it's going to be finished at. But that's the false Messiah. The real Messiah comes mid of night. Not at midnight, mid of night, because that night is going to be 12 hours longer, and that's when the planet arrives. When Earth has already tilted, the woman in the heaven, she's going to be standing up straight. Right now, she's laying down on her side. She's sideways whenever you're viewing her. When Earth tilts, she's going to be standing up, and the moon would be at her feet, just touching her feet. As the scripture says, mid of night from Jerusalem, you're going to see this, and she's going to be illuminated with light. That's not the sun. That's the tail of the comet illuminated, because it doesn't talk about any of the other constellations being illuminated. Only Virgo is illuminated. Okay, so obviously the model that you have, you've been adapting it to how the events have been advancing or advancing prophetically, but it's very difficult to know the exact year, mind you. But the signs that you mentioned about Virgo and the alignment, this already happened back in September 2017, and everybody thought, what? Yeah. I'm sorry, but we thought it was the event, right? That would announce all this. Not me, because that's the occult way of looking at the stars. Okay, September, you're looking at the sun, and what's behind the sun is the constellation. That's the zodiac. That's the occult version. The Mezarah, which is the Hebrew way, you look the opposite way. You look at the nighttime sky and the constellation behind what you're looking at, not the sun. That word Helios means illuminated body. It could be the sun, but not in an occult way. No. In a Mezarah way, that means the nighttime sky. And that means the object that's illuminating Virgo, because the sun illuminates Virgo every year. So that doesn't give you a specific time. There's only 2 times the moon is at the foot of Virgo, with a possibility. It was 2016 in 2021.
Sorry, 2016. Yeah, I was thinking 2017. It was 2016, right?
Right. Then it'll take another 93 years before the cycle of the moon, because the moon is tilted, and it takes I think it's 18.6 or 16. Yeah, 18.6 year for that tilt to come back all the way around. Okay, and because of that 0.6, it doesn't come back where it needs to be. It takes another multiple times, 93 years, before the moon will place itself exactly touching the foot of Virgo. 3.5 days after Passover, because the two witnesses show up for Passover, and we have a private meeting for 3 days with them, because there's no TV or radios working, because we're in the tail of the plasma. All generators are turned off globally. All electronics are turned off. Private meeting with the two witnesses. Then Yeshua shows up mid of night.
So there's gonna be a probable taking away of the remnant during the entry of the mid tribulation. Yeah.
No, tribulation is exactly 3.5 years. That's at the beginning of the tribulation. The remnant. See, the bride and the bridemaid, he's not going to put his bride through tribulation. She's going into a place in the wilderness for 1,260 days, it says. Well,
Okay,
that's the exact same length as the 3.5 years of the Great Tribulation. The tribulation is not 7 years, it's 3.5. The time period of Jacob's trouble is 20 years up to the Great Tribulation. Then it's 3.5 years of the Great Tribulation. And then there's the 1 year of marriage, where the seven-bowl judgment is only on the Antichrist. And there's a celebration in heaven for the wedding for that last 1 year. Hebrew groom cannot go to war until 1 year of marriage. Then he comes back down and he defeats the Antichrist. But during that 1 year, remember, the seven-bowl judgment doesn't give you a time frame. You have to know the Hebrew customs. The groom cannot go to war for 1 year. So that's when the seven-bowl judgments are done. Only on the wicked and the ones on the earth, the Antichrist.
So the macro model and the micro model are all precise in their scope
and the astronomy, and all of this. So yeah, you have to put it all three have to mesh.
That's amazing. And the Masarot, which is basically the Hebrew understanding of the constellations that go around the ecliptic.
Nighttime sky you're looking at. Yes.
Okay, yeah. And you have to see a nighttime sky, not the sun side, because if you see the sun side, it's pagan worship. It's the opposite side, and that's where we get this new information, which is incredible, because once you put in the aspect of Helios, it doesn't mean the sun we have here. It could be in Planet X, going behind Virgo.
Yes, ancient word, just like in Hebrew, was a description as well as almost like a name, but it was also a description, like the names before Noah. They each have a meaning. What was Methuselah meant? I think on his death, the rain comes, or the flood, or flood comes. So as soon as he died, boom, it happened. Just like Pele, it means division. That's when the continents divided. Okay, as soon as he died, the continents divided as well, because the planet right here was passing again. So Helios, it's a description and a name all in the same time. But you can also, it's the name of the sun, but it's also, when you're using it for a brand new object, it's also a description of what you're seeing. So it could be either or. It could be a comet, our Planet X, or it could be the sun. But when you understand what a Mesorah and how to read it, it's not the daylight sky. It's the nighttime sky. And it says literally only Virgo's illuminated. The sun illuminates all of the planets. I mean, all of the constellations. There's 88 constellations we're able to view from Earth. It's only talking about one. Well, guess what? The tail in the model, tail illuminates only Virgo. Once it passes us, you know, and it's mid of night in Jerusalem, remember, it already tells you the Messiah is coming mid of night. So are you looking at noon or midnight? You're looking at midnight.
Right, you're looking at the night side of Earth.
That's right. The details are there. Don't jump to conclusion. Make all the pieces fit.
Wow, well, that's amazing stuff. Just to keep you thinking, put your thinking caps on and your spiritual heart. Keep it sound and safe, and be in prayer. The day of the Lord is approaching. Just the change in climate is enough to see what's going on. The comets that are going to be coming in. But what really gets me is that the Virgo alignment is going to do a repeat in 2021, and then in 93 years we won't have one. So that means that this one has to be the one, right?
Well, put it this way: that's only that I can find at this moment, unless he enlightens me with another year of some type. Right now, that's the year. Unless we have new information or some other month or some other way of calculating this. Right now, that's why I'm saying we have to have a confirmation of sighting. And before the sighting to happen, you know it, because you're going to see CO3, 4, and 5. It will probably show up between 3 and 4, or during 4, which is terrorism. Whenever you see Islamic terrorism in Western nations happening, well, start paying attention to the sky once or twice a month. Look towards Sagittarius and see if you see a comet. You won't need a radio to tell you this. It's quite you won't need a telescope. You won't need a pair of binoculars. That will help you a little bit to see it maybe a few months earlier, but that's all. It will get to the point where everybody will see it in the nighttime sky, and it won't be frightening. It's going to look like a comet, and it's going to be during the time when Earth is having terrorism and that a peace agreement is trying to be talked about. It will take 4 to 5 months before they can get the peace agreement agreed upon and signed during this terrorism phase. The guy that's going to get the credit for signing that peace agreement, and he gets the credit. That's our verification that he is the Antichrist.
Oh, absolutely. That 7-year peace agreement that's coming.
Yes, and he'll break that peace agreement midway. That's a 40-day battle. That's the battle just before just before the rapture occurs. The 2 witnesses die. That's when Islam stops. They celebrate the death of the 2 prophets, and that gives time for that remnant, another remnant that survived the Holocaust that's going on in Israel. The northern 3/4 of Israel is going to be lost. It's going to be hand-to-hand combat. Their planes and tanks won't do them any good because it's hand-to-hand in cities. They would be pushed to the desert, a small remnant. They will fall to their knees. They'll pray to the Father to send the Messiah. And 3 days later, the dead are first, which means the 2 witnesses rise up and the rest of the dead follow them. Then what living is left goes up. They're the guests to the wedding. Then the other remnant, the bridemaid, is next. And then the bride. And there's a celebration in